the role of a business development professional comes into play, where we need to clearly explain what we do.
What skills are you expecting?
So the skills, everyone would directly point at stating that, communication is the key factor. Because you may again be the best person technically, you can give out the numbers, but then if you're not able to convince someone who's a non-expert.
So what are the risks that you think you should be able to tell to the landlord transparently before the deal is even signed?
So we have tools for scraping the data. Similarly, the demand and the supply has increased, many fold in the recent years.
So when you said, they need to know about the market, how do they start?
The landlord negotiation was the key here. It becomes very important because one, the landlord has to be happy with the process that we're carrying forward. We were projecting numbers upwards of 4.5 crore every month.
Very good afternoon, everyone. And in today's town hall, we have a very special guest, Mr. Smithin Joseph. He is right now handling a revenue model or a revenue specialist, I would say, for a company called as Beyond. It's a US-based company, and he's handling the revenue side of it. He explained in detail what it is on a day-to-day basis, working for an American company in India. Before that, he was also a senior cluster manager for a holding company called as Stanza Living, which is one of the biggest PG chains, if you have heard about it, especially in Bangalore and South India as well. And before that, he was a BD manager at Byju's.
5 years? Oh, no, 6 years. 6.
So he also has been a part of the BD marketing, sales, that kind of a window, as well as something to do with the real estate as well. So this expert is someone that we know from a long time. And you've not been able to have a discussion on the career like this before, but it's a great pleasure for me to introduce him to the entire cohort, and hopefully you will all be able to learn more on the marketing side. And after this, of course, the session, you will be open up, you'll be having chances to ask a lot of questions regarding different types of marketing sales as well. So Smithin, welcome.
Thank you so much, Niyant. It's an absolute pleasure to be a part of this cohort, talking to you guys, participating in a podcast, and it was a very great introduction. Thank you so much.
All right. So first, let's start with the journey. Very simple. So what's your background? Can you explain the places you worked, what you worked as? We'll just start with the simple one.
Sure. So I come from a civil engineering background. I think that is one common factor that you have with everyone here, right? So I come from the same background as well, civil engineering. Back in 2017 is when I completed civil engineering. Immediately after that, I had a career switch, which most of them would not be really keen on taking up. So I moved into a different industry altogether, which was Edtech. And I started working with Byju's. And the journey with Byju's moved for about 6 years of time. So I joined as a business development associate, and from there I moved to a business development manager, then moved on to training the salespersons as well. So this was the whole setup of the first 5 to 6 years of my career. Now, once I completed about 5 to 6 years in a startup environment, which gave so much to learn, that was the most important part of it, right? Learning through the career is quite important. So I was able to achieve that in the first 5 to 6 years. And that is when I had the opportunity to work back and join back in a similar industry where, I always wanted to be in, which was real estate. And that intent helped me reach Stanza Living. And the journey with Stanza Living started as a cluster head. This was handling a couple of different clusters in Landlord. One was Landlord region, which is the biggest cluster that Stanza has in the entire country. Though we had presence everywhere, Landlord is the most prolific one in terms of the revenue, in terms of size. And then it used to also handle a scholar market, which is Bangalore, where we used to have Christ University students as well. So these two markets were the ones I had a hold on. And moving from stanza living into, from Byju's to stanza living, there was a switch immediately from a B2C, a completely B2C structure into rather more of a B2B alliances as well in stanza living. And there was a lot more to offer, including, let's say, landlord negotiations, setting up contracts, discussing the portfolio. There are plenty of things that happens.
Legalities as well.
Absolutely. Legality as well. And then right after that is when I had the opportunity to jump into something more analytical, where I was able to look at the retention, look at the customer success, related again to something similar in real estate industry. So I took up short-term rental spaces, which the current company that I work with. And so that's Beyond. It's a US-based company, and I work for the EMEA, which is the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. And this is a complete remote setup that I work with. And handling it from India is definitely a challenge. But then I would say that it is equally rewarding and in terms of the learning experience as well. So that has been the journey so far.
It's great to know. So when we talk about BD or let's say marketing, how do you see, or what is your perspective on the BD in real estate, let's say, because that is something that you are able to get in depth. So how do you understand that market as a BD?
Good question. So see, business development or sales is a part of every industry, right? You cannot turn a blind eye against the sales side of it or the marketing side of it. Similarly, the demand and the supply has increased, many-fold in the recent years, even in the real estate industry. So this demands a more sorted, defined approach in terms of the marketing and sales as well, right? Because we need to, you may have the best product in the market. Stanza Living has a name, it has the brand in itself, right? So we have the brand, but then how do we reach out to the audience? That's more important. So the marketing comes into play. The role of a business development professional comes into play, where we need to clearly explain what we do to the audience and what exactly are the offerings that we have, what are the services provided, and then civil engineering does play a key role in that, because there's a lot of technical aspects to it. So it makes it very important, I would say.
But now that you have spoken about civil engineers and business development, what skills are you expecting if you want someone in a BD role from a civil engineering background? Apart from just the technical awareness of how construction works, what other skills are you looking at?
See, the good part about engineers is that engineers are problem solvers inherently, right? We always look to solve and reach solutions in major problems. It could be as small as a market study, or as high level as a geotechnical, in any aspect of a construction industry. So the skills, everyone would directly point at stating that, communication is the key factor. I would agree to that to an extent. Yes, communication is important, but then communication is a very broad term. You need to look at what sort of communication are you expecting. So I think it's quite important that a civil engineer or anyone from the engineering background who already has technical expertise with that would try and develop the negotiation aspect of communication. That is one, because that is the key in, business development when you're dealing with real estate projects. Apart from negotiation, I think a knack to, the urge to understand the market is quite important. So market analysis, anyone could say that there's a lot of information that is available online. So you look up Google, you look at the market, you look at the competition. But that is not enough in, the period that we're in right now. There is a lot more in requirement. We need to look at the demand centers. We need to properly project what numbers we're looking at, what is the target audience that we're dealing with, what institutions are there, what is the longevity of these institutions that will flourish. There are plenty of factors that comes into play. So based on these, you need to have a strong grip on the market. And I think that makes, any engineer stand out in the BD for this. And of course, apart from the negotiation factor and the market study, communication is the most basic that everyone would know. You need to be able to present what you know. because you may again be the best person technically, you can give out the numbers, but then if you're not able to convince someone who's a non-expert, right? Then there is no point of being a business development associate.
So when you said, they need to know about the market, how do they start?
Okay. So this is a very good question again, because I had a very difficult period to start off in Stanza because I came in from a different background, right? I was dealing with B2C completely, EdTech background. There's one reason why I chose EdTech is, if anyone would ask why the switch from civil to EdTech is basically because that was booming. There was a massive scale at exponential growth in terms of EdTech in the last few years.
And especially by you said.
Exactly. Very valid point. So I was a part of that startup environment, and the understanding and the learning that I had, I could take it up into the sales side in real estate. But then the technical aspects or what exactly would we be dealing with in real estate was different. So initially, the first training phase that I had with Stanza Living was again a part of a market study, where I had to level where I would do scouting, understanding the market. But then this was all the usual process that anyone would look at, right?
Correct.
I mean, I give someone in the audience a market. What they can best do is they can Google and search online and find out what are the demand centers there. There could be an institution, anything that sort. But then you need to have a strong relationship building around the market study as well. You need to have the right connections, which is the most difficult part. If you have the right connections, things fall into place. So when I start doing a market research, the ground research of what are the demand centers, what is the scale of the target audience, what is the growth expected in the next 5 to 10 years. Based on that, how do we set up our supply in real estate? These are all the fundamentals to start with. But then beyond that, there's a lot of interaction that happens with the stakeholders that are in the market. We would be talking to the prominent landlords in the vicinity, trying to understand, because they always have a heads up regarding the major projects that are coming up in that area. So that adds value to the market study. Apart from that, I also believe after all these groundwork, it is also important for you to step into the role at a base level where you yourself do a lot of research moving around the area. You could get information from someone who runs a shop, correct, to someone who runs a major institute as well. So I think that is how your market, study develops. I wouldn't say that there is a strict rule that you need to follow, but different factors come into play in order to ensure that you do the market.
So you spoke about the one half of it, let's say the market study to understand what kind of projects are coming up in the vicinity and getting the source. So source can be anyone. Now the second part of it is, let's say once you've finalized, okay, this is the project, how to close a deal. So as someone in the real estate, especially in the sales side, how is the process of closing a deal, let's say?
Okay. So I get this is a question that I myself had to, look at strongly when I started my career with Stanza. Now, I've done the research, the groundwork is all set up. I have the rules, I have the area, I have the geography, I have the complete hold and grip of the market. The next step is you're looking at properties, right? You're looking at properties where I could probably start my business along with that property. In a profit-sharing model, let's say with the landlord. I'll give you an example. So when we started scaling Landlord, I don't think Landlord is too far away from here as well. We have the biggest property that Stanza has in Landlord, right? Which is about 15 towers in total that can hold up to a capacity of around 1,000 beds. So you're looking at a huge community, more like a residential plan. We started with one tower there. And the initial first, when I joined the availability, the first 2 towers were with us, Gate Stanza. The landlord negotiation was the key here, right? So that becomes very important because one, the landlord has to be happy with the process that we're carrying forward in order to ensure that the towers that he is building around with whoever that is, his team, they're also convinced with the idea. So it takes a lot of effort to try and tell them, give them that value proposition that this is the business that we're dealing with. This is the kind of returns we're expecting out of it. This is the ROSI that is possible in that tower of the building. And what are the projected numbers that we have for the future? So when we present this data, it is key that they understand the value. So value proposition becomes. So the negotiation is the first part of, starting off an acquisition. Then once we have the basic negotiation, we start with the legality. We start with the letter of intent. We then go ahead and make an SOW, and all these comes. But then everyone should understand that this is not an easy process of something that happens in quick time, because we're not dealing with one product. We're dealing with business that is worth crores of, millions to say. So that negotiation has to happen so smooth, very transparent as well. And this has to continue as a long-term association. So that's clear.
So this is something that I want to mention. So majority of the real estate is probably buying, selling. However, the market that you worked in is not exactly buying, selling. It is more like a cash flow kind of a thing, where you have a a proper month-on-month revenue, month-on-month cash flow, retainer kind of a model, or a subscription kind of a model, where people are just paying for each month, or they pay for a year. So how do you explain that to the landlord? Because if it's just one time, it's easier for the landlord to just understand, okay, I've invested this, I'm getting this in return. With your model, it was slightly different. You have to show the projection, okay, next year we are charging this, 2 years later we are charging this, so this percentage comes to you. So how do you work out those sort of calculations?
So I would agree with you. This is something that has turned completely upside down after COVID, right? Because there were a lot of landlords, owners who struggled during that phase and now trying to catch up with all the losses. The problem statement here is that it's all based on trust, right? Construction industry mostly works on trust. Now, if you're a major player in the market, that gives you an advantage, but that does not guarantee anything. For example, let's say Stanza Living is a major player. I go up and, give my brand name to them. They know what Stanza is. It does not mean that they can sign a contract. Again, after, putting up every groundwork, showing them the value, it is also important to understand, because for that, they may not understand the business completely. They are just looking for what is coming into their bank account at the end of the day. So there were landlords who would completely move with a profit sharing model. There would be landlords who would want a minimum guarantee, and then, maybe for a period of an year or so, and then switch to a profit sharing. So it works differently. For us, obviously, a profit sharing model is the most beneficial one, where we know that even if we are at 30% occupancy, we're going to only share that with the landlord, right? So that works best for us. But then acquisition is key and was key during the COVID phase. So when we went on, we would negotiate with the landlords, talk to them. And then we would give them the understanding that you have this building, you give it out to a rent, or you would sell. The returns that is expected out of is, let's say, X% is the rental increase. But then in an industry like this, where we're dealing with short-term rentals, where we're dealing with less than 12 months, the turnover is massive, right? The turnover is massive. Even if we are into a profit sharing model, let's say the landlord takes 60% of the cut, is still making significantly higher amounts of money. But then again, this has to be very well detailed and transparently explained to the landlord. So that is key. The communication again becomes, and with a property like the one which I was talking about in Landlord, we were projecting numbers upwards of 4.5 crore every month, just from the rental value that we would have. And we started with about 1.5 crore. So that's a massive projection that we have to show to them. So if you have the name in the market, yes, they give the trust, right? But then it is also important to continue that trust. Let's say you lose the trust, it is easy to replace, because there are 10 players behind us who are ready to take over at a much better rate.
Now, see, one of the challenges that we see, especially in the co-living or the wine industry, majority of our students are also living in PGs, and because they're not from this city, so they're coming here. And we also saw that recently there was some death in some PG, there were some rules changes and all that. So there is a lot as a risk for some company like Stanza Living, where rules and regulations might change, government might put stricter rules. So now they've made fire exit compulsory. So a lot of these things keep on changing. So what is actually the risk factor? So if let's say you are someone and the sales, you are talking to the owner. So what are the risks? Probably like 5 risks that you think you should be able to tell to the landlord transparently before the deal is even signed.
See, with the landlord, I think that conversation is much more easy because explaining the profit side of it would probably help them take a call. But then with the customer, with the end users coming in with the problems like this, right? So someone walks in, I'm at a property, trying to show them the property and the facilities we offer. And then they bring up talks like these where, there are risk elements, having a congested space can lead to more problems. So this involves, again, a cross-functional connection with different departments, I would say. Now, everything is legal and, we are bound by a lot of legal terms when they come into a PG. And that is the advantage of any resident, for that matter, staying in an organized PG, a regulated PG. That's the advantage that they get. They're covered for all the risks that are potentially there, which can follow up after their stay starts. But with unorganized, we don't have that. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of unorganized players in the market. But I can talk from the perspective of Stanza. When we start a contract with anyone who's coming in, we definitely have an agreement. That's the basic. Anything that is used in the property, any facility that we offer, any other charges, everything is mentioned and documented. And this also is the first level of security that we provide, because most of the landlords do not provide the agreement. That's the first. And everything is online. They can take it anywhere to the court, and it's all legal. The second layer is a verification that happens. Right? So any person coming in is always verified first. And the verification happens based on 2 things. One is a market. Let's say the market is completely based on the working professionals. On that property, we wouldn't give issuers to students. That's very simple. But then anyone who's unorganized would try and take them up as well. Right? Yeah. That's the process. So the initial layer of security is making sure that their documents, including the, let's say, their Aadhaar, their, whatever documentation that's basic, is collected and documented along with it. Their parents or the alternate number, all these things are collected at the back. Everything happens online. But when coming back to your question, to answer your question, I would say to landlords as well, this is the pitch that we use. Because we provide then additional layers of safety before an admission is granted to any student or working professional. So they are comfortable. They don't say that it's much safe. So that's the whole point.
So before this, we spoke about your role in Beyond. Can you elaborately explain? Because that is quite intriguing to me as well. I'm pretty sure they will find it as well. So what happens in your role in Beyond? So can you explain the role?
Yeah. Yes, I'm very excited about Beyond all the time because that's the company that I work with. This is something that has probably not touched more than 2 decades in the market as well. So to explain anyone what Beyond does is that we have a tool and we're the ones behind the pricing differences that you see online, right? You look for a hotel, you look for a flight, you look for any service online, the price may keep changing based on the day of the week, based on the seasonality, based on different factors, right? So Beyond created a tool that would offer a service where we make sure that the owners or the property managers make money. That's the most simple way to make sure, to understand Beyond. What I do is I work as a revenue analyst, a revenue specialist, you could call it. So there's a team of customer success managers who look at portfolios of massive scales as well. So we have properties that we are having around, let's say, 20,000 listings. And if we have properties as low as, probably renting out 5 or 6, listings. So what I would do is I would try and help the customer success managers build a storyline and how exactly is the market, where do we find the risks, and what are the challenges that are upcoming so that we can take a proactive approach. One part of it is obviously the retention of the clients to stay with Beyond. But the most important factor is to make sure that they earn more revenue, right? So that involves looking at their graphs, looking at their charts, looking at their dashboards, looking at the overall seasonality, how it is performing, and basically everything related to revenue management is what I.
So this is mostly in terms of buy and selling, or is it mostly in terms of leasing? Where does this come into?
It is more into leasing. It is more into renting space. We do not deal with the buying or the ownership kind because our clients are the property managers or the owners. Correct. We do not have the end consumers coming in taking our business, right? I mean, obviously, if you're having a renting space next to your house, you could depend on me for that too. But then potentially we're looking at everything that is more likely be the property.
So when you say, of course, the first objective is to make more revenue for the owners. So can you explain if you have like an example or something from the customer point of view? How does Beyond look to them? So is it something that they have to come to your app and do it? Is it something that they go on any leasing app which is already there in the marketplace, and you are the ones who are in the back end of it? So how does that?
Okay, so there is a very strong integration that works in between. So any property would have a PMS, a property management software. If that is something new to you, it is basically the one which, in simple words, blocks out what is booked and makes the others available and regulates every booking that comes through payment software. So we are an additional layer in that framework where we try and regulate the pricing completely, and then that is sent across the PMS. And then that is the end result or the number that you would see on any platform such as Airbnb or Booking.com. That's what the end user sees it as. When I say that we help make more money, it is because there are, a market, let's say, develops itself during a high season of maybe June, July, August. And then there are extremely low seasons right before December, let's say. So we provide not only the services to maintain that dynamic pricing where we try and reduce the price when it is a low season so that property managers and owners still make money. We also provide payment softwares related to that. We also provide the functionality of a website we can create for them where the clients can directly book on their website, and that is taken care by Beyond as well. And so this is more like a product and a service which is offered, making sure that they earn more even when they are not in the pink of the best in the market.
So let me give you a perception that we have in India at least, that the rentals, especially when we want to book an Airbnb or a hotel or whatever it is, the pricing changes like you told. And we always believe as a normal outsider that the pricing is set by the owner. How true is that, or how false?
In most cases, at least in India, I think that is very true. Because owners are the ones deciding the price, and then with the help of these tools that they use, the aggregators or PMS that they use, they'll probably give them cues that I'm not able to say, I'm not having the occupancy. So maybe drop down the price by 10%. Or if there are longer stays, let's give it 15% discount. So these rules are basically set by the owners. But the problem is owners are not really having access to the data, I would say.
They're not the market experts.
They're not the market experts, exactly. So they would probably have information from the nearby, let's say the neighborhood, what their friends are doing, but these are not warranted information, right? You need actual insights which can help them price their product, let's say their property in this case, during the periods of low season. In India, I would say it is still regulated mostly by owners, as you rightly said. But in international markets, it's completely different. There are no owners who are looking at this because they're busy with other tasks of expansion. They're looking at acquisition. They're talking to their property managers. They have a bunch of things. the least that they want to get worried about is the day-to-day activities that goes. They're already taking care of the operational cycle. So we come in place and we make sure that we handle it for them, ensuring that the pricing fluctuates by itself according to the algorithm we have created and based on the entire market. So when we say that we have strong data backing, we say that this is coming from a complete market research, a team that constantly works through this, and we have tons of data from the entire cluster of the market through straight data. So this ensures that we're able to price it right.
So when you said in India, it's slightly more towards the owner taking the control. And this might result in a lot of owners sometimes undercutting a lot, especially their costs during the low seasons. Because they're desperate as well. And like you said, the listing is not going at all. So they'll probably have to cut by 50-60%. So do you expect any kind of regulation from the government, or is it not to be touched by the government? What is your opinion on this?
With the current trends that we're seeing, I think there would be a lot of nuances that the government has to look into if they're trying to regulate this kind of a market. Yeah. I would say everyone has a difference of opinion, and with the legislation that we currently have in India, it becomes quite a task to end up setting up a rule for it. So I think currently it is given completely, freedom to the owners, yes. And then, as you rightly said, this happens in most cases too. When you're not aware of the market, desperate for occupancy, you try and cut down the prices so bad that myself, when I travel, I have stayed in properties which is a steal, right? It's a complete steal. And then there are places where they would hike up the price so badly, and there's a search fee and everything that it was. So that was, unsold as well. So the government, I would say, is still not a completely, I wouldn't say that there is a completely regulated model that is followed currently, just the owners. But then in the process, they make tons of errors. But to give my opinion, I would say, if the government do not impose strict rules, I think there is definitely a scope for the government to play a part in it, where there are rules which can be, I wouldn't say flexible, but that more aligned to the wishes of the owners.
Now, if I have to talk about, let's say, the marketing side of it, or especially in terms of leasing, right? There are two things that, of course, resonate. One is the marketing. Second is using the data to come up with the pricing. Now, how does market research work in your year? So what all data do you actually collect? How do you collect it?
So we have tools for scraping the data. These are high-end tools that can scrape data from, multiple channels. The primary one, I would say, is, of course, the Airbnb, and this is not easy to track. If I give you an example, recently there was a transition in the interface of Airbnb, a shift where the software providers, the companies like Beyond, were not able to get into those systems and scrape the data. We came up with an innovative proposition where, because we constantly work at the back end to have any challenges, right, and to deal with those challenges, so we were able to quickly, in a matter of days, we were able to out of that and provide the audience that we have, with the customers we have, with the real data again. So the scraping is the first part of it, where we take the raw data from anywhere, from Airbnb, from the hotel websites, anything of that matter. So this is huge, right? The data is pretty big. Cleaning the data becomes an integral part, because if you do not clean the data, then you're not able to work around. So when you start off, you look at scraping the data, and then you move on to cleaning the data, and that is where you will have the fundamentals to actually look at and price the product, or price the product. One such example is based on the market research again, how the occupancy fluctuates throughout the year. Based on the occupancy, how does the pricing differ? There is also another tool that we have, which is an installation that we have at the back end, which is called the search demand pricing. It's called search powered pricing rather. So SPP, or the search powered pricing that we have at Beyond, what it does technically is, maybe, there are hundreds of people searching in a platform for a particular date. We get hold of that data. So we take that data, we understand that there is a certain demand that is there. We check at the back end with the revenue management if there is an actual event that is happening.
Festival,
Exactly.
election.
Right. So if there is nothing, then there is a trend. There is something that is coming up in the market which we're not aware of. Because people are searching for those dates, that particular area. And based on that, based on the search power or the search data that we have, we try and watch up the price. Because we'd see results from it quickly, right? So that's another step, that happens. But I would say the marketing side of it, even and beyond, is extremely rooted. It's extremely important to reach out to the property managers clients because we do have some. We could say that we stand out from the rest of the competitors with these factors. We have brought in AI recently. It's all new products. We have a lot of insights which customers can use without any technical expertise. We've made it so simple and efficient for the end user. But the problem is we have this product, but if it is not marketed through the right channels, social media is the key these days. So that's one factor that defines it. So referrals work in scales in any construction industry. We have a happy partner giving us a testimonial that goes scales as well. So that's how the marketing side works.
Now, in terms of, let's say for the end user, you use the word search, SPP, right?
Yes.
So how fast can you change the price? For example, let's say you get to know from the data that there is some event that has been announced. I'll give an example. We have all seen last week what happened when Coldplay announced the concert in Mumbai, million plus tickets, bookings, and all those things happen. People are booking hotels nearby to view the stadium instead of booking the ticket in the stadium. A lot of demand came into picture, and suddenly the hotel prices near like 3 kilometer, 5 kilometer vicinity within minutes went up. So how fast is your data with the real time for the end user?
It's quick. Honestly, it's very quick. We can change the price. We make the command and it goes immediately to the property management software that the end user uses. And then it immediately changes. So you would see a surge that is happening within a few hours, I would say. So today, this morning, I make sure that, let's say I check the price. I see that there is a surge. I make the changes. It directly gets moved on to the PMS tool. And then usually there are twice in a day when the pricing refreshes itself. That's the fundamental. But then we have an option. Let's say we see that surge in demand. We have the option to refresh from our end. So that is quite quick. And the end user gets to see that immediately, the effect.
Because the reason I asked you this is because if I go for, let's say, flights in Make My Trip or any other website, the change of price is very quick. Like each refresh, it changes. Do you see a place or a time when real estate pricing can be that fast, where it's fluctuating based on minutes? Or do you see hours or half day once is good enough?
Since we're dealing with a much larger industry at play, and it is very deeply rooted with even now we use conventional techniques. And I would say that any modern tech that comes in is slightly slow in the construction industry, right? It definitely catches up, but it takes time. Because this also leaves a trust issue at the end user, the consumer. Let's say I'm the one looking at that property. Every minute or every few hours, I see that there is a change in price. The people right now are, smart enough to understand that there is something that is happening. There is a play in the back. Okay. So I don't want to do that. Ideally, it would be once, twice in a day. Some people change pricing every week. So it's a more relaxed kind of a model. And I think that works also best. But honestly, we cannot predict anything that is with the current trends that we have. We do not know where we are approaching. So we might end up in a phase where, just like how the tickets were sold out quickly, we would have, there is a demand, the price has gone up and it is keeping on fluctuating. We could end up there.
So now in terms of, let's say, the role that you do, starting from a civil engineering background, because they have a lot of civil engineers here. If you are looking at, let's say, hiring someone from the civil engineering background, apart from the civil, what other skills do you expect them to know before they come into this sector?
I think it is.
You've spoken about communication.
Yes, for sure.
Negotiation, for sure. Apart from that, is there anything that?
So the role that I play with the company or anything that is similar at Beyond, for example, because I work there, the skills that we would look at for anyone coming from an engineering background, let's say civil, they have the technical expertise. So they are inherently, as I said earlier, they are problem solvers. So that's a certain advantage that we have. We have a situation. The engineers would know to jump onto that and, probably play the street smart technique that they have and get on with the problem and find a fix quickly as possible. But apart from this, I think it is important to have an analytical mindset because you also need to make decisions which could affect the business. Though it can be, a short-term rental. If you're probably taking a decision too late, it affects the revenue stream. If you're taking the decision too early, it again affects the revenue stream. So you need to be on your toes to make sure that you're smart enough to identify the trends. Look at everything a bit more analytically. And on top of that, you need to have, the communication changes here through different channels. It's not only about communicating directly as a person. It's also over emails. Emails become a very important factor. Because you're probably you have tons of information that you know about the short-term industry, about the market. But then if you're not able to convey it to someone who does not know these trends, and if they go as someone who did not understand the whole point, then it becomes baseless, right? So you need to have a strong analytical mindset, the rule that I do. And I wouldn't say that I had it inherently, but I'm developing it. As everyone has learned it, right? But the company would help you to do that. And on top of that, I also believe that with the experience that you gain through each of the client that you manage, each of the customer success manager that you speak to, you would start having that mindset and developing into a more technical and analytical person.
Great. So when you say these skills required, is there something that they should be looking at? Let's say learning from a book or watching a podcast. Is there some source that they can use? Of course, not everything, because you told majority of it is from the experience of the market. But to some extent, is there something that you can probably...
Definitely. I would say that the media right now is so strong and there is plenty of information. All you need to do is filter out what you need, right? Anything that you search for, it is available, but you need the assistance or the approach to find out what you actually need, which answers your problem. I would say if you know effective searching, if you are able to search through something effectively, you'll be able to find a lot of content, even on YouTube. You would be able to find a lot of courses online that helps to build the base of it. When I moved it to Stanza, I was quite sure that there is a definite requirement of data as well, right? It is not only about communication, because I can speak, but should I back it up with numbers? Yes, I guess. So I did a course on one of the service providers. It was analytics, basically. You can start from the base. There is nothing like you need to know everything before you start. You can start from the base, have an understanding of how you could manage the day-to-day operations. Look at the analytics. Google Analytics provides excellent tools which are very interactive, very immersive. You could look at how you process data. And when I say data, if you're not from a computer background, which I'm also not, and I honestly would say that I do not like coding or any of those, something along those lines. These are not related to that at all. You could learn from any background that you come from. You could learn the basics of data by looking into these courses which are available online. Only if you need a certification, I think you would have to pay in the end. Rest of it, the walkthrough through the course, the capstone projects that you would do, mostly is free of charge. So you could do that. You could start there. I'm not an avid reader, but then I cannot suggest any books, but I would say I read through a lot of blogs and I watch a lot of podcasts.
Anything is specific?
I would say anything that speaks about their experience in sales and related to construction helps. I cannot recommend a channel then, I would say. But then it could happen anytime. Most of the people, when I speak to them, the trouble is I don't have time to listen. But you're listening, right? I can walk
outside for 30 minutes and I can listen to a podcast and finish it. It would not be a completely focused or very immersive experience that I get out of it, but then I fetch a few points which I could research later on and then get a fair bit of idea as well. So that's how I built it around. And then definitely the experience comes after you get it to it. But to start off, I don't think you need Greek, Latin, you need a lot of different things. You just need to have the basic idea.
All right. With that, I would like to conclude our discussion. Thank you, Smithin, for being a part of this.
Thank you so much. Absolute honor again. Me and the team, the batch chair, the cohort chair. Wonderful talking to you and looking forward to the next session.